What is up, everybody? It's Ed Gow Jr. here from Dad Central. Hope you're all doing fine. Excited, jacked, fired up for another epic episode of the Dad Central Show with Drew. What's going on, Drew?
Well, hi, Ed. What's going on is that I'm feeling pretty grateful today. We've been recording shows and having a great time doing it, but now we're beginning to see the impact of these conversations and that they're having. And I think that's the main reason we're here, to help listeners in the most important job they'll ever have, which is being a parent. I know it's having effect because of listener feedback, like these 2 reviews that we've got on Apple Podcasts. So I just want to share them quickly. So Backspin says, incredible resource, such a great tool for dads seeking to take their parenting to the next level. And then another reviewer, JKL89, says, real dads, real questions, real answers. I'm looking forward to more shows to fuel, motivate, and encourage me on my dad life journey. A real godsend. So I just want to say thank you, Backspin and JKL89. We're really honored to hear our guests and that the show continues to give you some practical tools. And so for those of you listening now, we'd love it if you share your feedback. Give us a review, rate the show, subscribe, or share it with friends and family, because our goal is to give dads the resources they need to help them in raising confident, successful kids. And it's great to have your support in doing that. So I'm grateful, Ed, and I'm grateful also that we get to do this and have another great guest today who's going to share amazing insight.
Absolutely. So before Drew introduces our new friend today, just want to remind everyone, as always, the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there is a positive impact. So Drew, trumpet time.
Well, this is a real treat because I was connected to this individual by a mutual friend. And so, and when his immediate response to me was, well, if you've been introduced by so-and-so, then I know that, you're good. So he our mutual friend vouched for us. And so that's good. But even then, in getting to talk with our guest, I'm really excited just because of what he's going to bring. And so our guest is Derick Grant. And so Derick Grant played 8 years for the world famous Harlem Globetrotters. And so he knows what it takes to perform at an elite level. After realizing that it was his responsibility to cultivate this seed and make it grow, he set out on a mission to teach others. And so from experiencing his awakening at a rapid rate in 2020, Derick's been on a mission to help human beings remember what they were before they forgot. So he focuses now on helping individuals to better understand the nature of the reality of both in their inner world and in their outer world. So he's actually got a TEDx talk, Minding Your Mind, What the Great Ones Don't Tell You. And in that talk, he tells about the importance of cultivating your mindset. And so as dads, I think that's really important. And so now he's living his passion, helping people realize their hidden potential and awakening their Christ consciousness to see the unity in us all. And so he successfully developed a coaching firm that helps people gain a limitless mindset by fully realizing their infinite potential. And his mentorship has produced professional athletes, elementary school teachers, CEOs. So I'm really excited to bring Derick on and have a great conversation, because dads could really benefit from this mindset coach. So Derick, welcome. Great to have you.
Thank you, Ed, Drew. Thank you for having me on. This is definitely my pleasure to be in the company of 2 great dads like yourselves. So thank you.
Appreciate it. What's been life like for you over the last few months?
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind. I always, my motto now is just take it one day at a time. That's it. I just try to literally take it one day at a time. Enjoy the flowers while I'm here, and that's it, really. And then over time, when you look back on it, it all adds up. But yeah, one day at a time is what I try to do.
Excellent. We're looking forward to an epic conversation with you. I've never met you before, but I'm very, very interested to hear some of your personal and dad journey, not only for us, but for our audience, because I know they're going to get positive benefits out of everything you have to share. So first conversation piece I want to ask you, let's go back to the early years, Derick. What was it like growing up as a young guy with dada?
Yeah, my father, well, let me preface it with, I always had a sports mind, played basketball, I played golf, basketball, football, baseball. I was the quintessential athlete, right? My dad was not that, though. My dad didn't play sports. He grew up in rural South Carolina during the Civil Rights Movement. He was one of 9 kids. His father died when he was 7 years old. So, and his mom never remarried. So his main goal in life was to be a father, to be this thing that he really didn't have growing up. So he was never pushing sports saying, you got to do this, you got to do. What he did do is he always instilled values in me. He always instilled, work ethic and discipline and, kindness, all of these things that no matter if I played sports or not, they were going to be attributes that I would use in life. And, my father, thankfully he's still around now at, 70 years old, and he's still teaching me. I'm still learning from my father, talking to him every day. I'm still learning from him and soaking up his knowledge and wisdom that I can apply, to not only my life, but also my children's life as well. But my father, he worked for Kraft Foods growing up. So we were constantly moving. His big thing was to be present and to make sure he provided a lifestyle for his family that he didn't have growing up. And, through that, my dad, maybe at times he wasn't there physically, but he was always calling home. He was always checking to make sure, how's everything? How was your day? I can say my dad was always emotionally present in my life. It still is.
Mm. Yeah, that sounds really powerful. I love the presence, and of course, many dads could really resonate with this idea of providing. But can you talk to me about what did that mean for you as you were growing up, having that type of influence from your own father?
Yeah, I've always been attuned and been aware of how basically people's perceptions, outside of my own. I've always been aware of that. I think back on my father, how he really wanted to make sure he was a good father to me and my brother. Like that was a goal of his. Just like, maybe a basketball player's goal is to be the leading scorer in the league. Like his goal was to be what he didn't have. And I was always aware of that. So when he took time to teach me, when he took time to show me things, when he took time to like, hey, let's go fishing or let's go ride go-karts, I always valued that because for some reason I just knew, even at a young age, like this was his goal. He's trying to be what he didn't have. Because I remember my dad had a conversation when I was young and he told me about how his father died, and his dad basically went hunting and was gone for 3 days and they couldn't find him, and they ended up finding his body like 20 yards from the house in the woods. And I remember when he told me, I was probably about 10 or 11 years old, but I'm like, man, he was 7 years old when his dad died. 7 years old. And I couldn't comprehend. So when he told me that, it's almost like it made me want to value all of the time that I spent with him, not only from my perspective, but from his perspective, because I knew what he was trying to do. So, I say that's kind of my own awareness, but my father, I mean, he's always been my hero. And people, I'm 6'2", athletic. My dad's 5'7". If you saw him, he used to come to practice and people were like, that's your dad? I'm like, yeah, that's it. Like he's always been my hero. And it wasn't because of what he did. It was because of who he was.
Mm. Yeah, that's really powerful. Ed, you want to hop in?
Yeah. Was in the environment that you grew up in, how many of your friends had their fathers?
Yeah. I had friends who had fathers, but their fathers weren't emotionally present in their lives, because dad's working 80 hours a week, or, dad's doing this, and then I had friends who didn't have fathers. So I had to see the value of not only physically being there, but emotionally being there. And to me, that's more important than anything. So now in, my children's lives, this is part of one of the reasons with the Globetrotters, when I played for 8 years, it's like I'm on the road 9 months out of the year. It's hard to be physically present, obviously, but it's also difficult to be emotionally present when you're gone for 5 months straight. So this was one of the things when I realized when me and my wife had my son, it was like, I want to be as good as or a better father than what my dad was to me. And he's a great father. I know that I have to be physically and emotionally present. And, seeing that with my own friends of them not having that, and seeing the residual effects of their fathers not being present in their lives, it really put something in my mind to say, like, when I do have kids one day, I gotta be there. I gotta be there emotionally, physically, spiritually. I have to be there for my children.
Well, since you brought it up, maybe we can talk a little bit about that process of, as you said, being on the road, 5 months without being able to be at home, 8 months of the year. How did you navigate that process to be the dad that you wanted to be while you were still traveling like that?
Yeah, it was challenging. I think I was in my 6th year when we had our son. He was about 4.5 months old when I left. We would leave Christmas morning every year because our first game of the tour would be December 26th. Well, when I would leave Christmas morning, I was not coming home until May. My wife would come out when she could. We were in a city long enough. But I never forget when I left home, he was about 4.5 months old, and he wasn't sleeping through the night. And I remember my wife would call me when we'd be on the road, and she'd be in tears and she'd be crying. She's like, because he won't go to bed and he's asleep. He's in his crib and he's crying. And, I had the luxury of saying, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I could just go to sleep. But I remember one night it was like, it really hit home because I could hear him there crying. I could hear it. And it was like, here I am. I could just not even have to deal with this really. But I'm actually feeling what she's feeling somewhat. I don't really fully comprehend, but I'm experiencing a little bit. And I said, I got to be home. And I never forget when I came home in May, it was like a completely different child, a 4.5-month-old to a 9-month-old, night and day. And I realized, like, I walked in the house and I was holding him. He was kind of like looking at me like, who are you? Like, that was something that I at that moment I said, okay, I gotta start planning an exit strategy. Because me and my wife, we said we want to have 2 children. I said, I can't, there's no way I can bring a second child into this world and I'm not home. So that was kind of an agreement that we made. We said that when we do decide to have our second child, I'll be done with the Globetrotters. And as fate may have it, Globetrotters called me up on a Thursday telling me that they were moving in a different direction and that I was being let go. And on Friday, my wife took a pregnancy test and it was positive. So, yeah,
Nothing just happens. Wow.
yeah.
Drew, go ahead.
Well, I think that for a listener who, maybe their job is not the same, but they're still away a lot, and they don't have the luxury of having an exit strategy. They have to find a way to navigate being present emotionally or in some way, but being physically absent. You've experienced that. Obviously, you had an exit strategy, and you talked very closely with your wife about how to navigate that. But can you maybe share a little bit of combination of your mindset coach as well as your lived experience that might help a dad who is like, I want to be present, but I've got this job that keeps me away, and I really struggle with it. I want to be, but I don't know what to do. I'm torn. What would you say to that dad?
Quality time is everything. The time that you do have physically with your children, it has to be quality. Now being an entrepreneur, with COVID, for the longest, I got spoiled. I could work from home. And so I'd just go, I had an office at home and just work from home. And then what I realized is my time with my children, it wasn't quality time because there was no separation between work and being home. So I made the decision to go and get an office and rent out space. And my wife's like, yeah, but you were home. And I'm like, yeah, but I wasn't really home. I wasn't mentally, I wasn't emotionally home. So I made the agreement that, look, here's what I'll do. I'll work from 8 till 4, but when I get home at 4:30, I'm home. So the kids know they're getting the best version of me. They're getting all of me. So I would say to a dad, make sure that when you are at home, whether it's on the weekend or in the evening, the phone is up, the emails are put away. You're spending quality time and you're giving that emotional attention that your children need. Because at the end of the day, I can spend 4 hours with you and not really be emotionally present, or I could spend 30 minutes with you and be locked in on everything that we do and hear everything that you're saying. And that those 30 minutes will mean more to that child than those 4 hours.
Mm-hmm. I think that many dads would hear that and be like, yeah, I get that. But I feel like there's also barriers to getting away. So maybe could you share what are the barriers to you got in your way when you were at home and had the luxury of being there, but recognize you weren't being present? Can you talk a little bit about those barriers and how you might, again, coach somebody to overcome those barriers?
Yeah, I think you have to ask yourself, what is your why and how important is it? right? So if I want to be a great father and that's the priority, then there's going to be times that as an entrepreneur, I have to be willing to sacrifice. And you have to ask yourself, are you willing to sacrifice? So I can't say I want to be a great dad and be present for my kids, but then when my son's like, hey, daddy, can you come outside and play basketball? And I'm not willing to put that on the shelf and go all, then what I'm saying and what I'm doing aren't lining up. And that tells me that what I'm saying I want, I really don't want it bad enough, because if I did, my actions would match it. So this is where you got to look yourself in the mirror and really be honest with yourself as a father and saying like, oh, I know I want to be a great dad. I want to be there for my, okay. Well, then with that comes a bit of sacrifice, and you have to be willing at times, whether it's your, whether it's money, whether it's an opportunity, you must be willing to say no to that, to put your children's lives first. Because here's what I'm learning. It's just from dealing and coaching a lot of people and in my own life. You have these residual effects of things that happen in your childhood, right? So we got to think about that right now as fathers. What I'm doing today will affect my child tomorrow. So I have to ask myself, this opportunity that's going to have me on the road, and I may have to travel 3 weeks out of each month for 3 months. Am I willing to sacrifice that time of seeing my son's games and being at his practices and being present just so my bank account can look a little different? Am I willing to make that sacrifice? And this is sometimes where the rubber meets the road. And a lot of people, it's everyone's different. Everyone has different values. Everyone has different trajectory of where they want to go. All I'm saying is, as a father, if your kids, if that's really truly your priority, then at times you're going to have to sacrifice work, money, if that's because of the residual effects of what it have on your children emotionally down the road.
Interesting. Could go in a couple different directions here. And I'm going to ask one more of a
Sure.
like a devil's advocate challenging question.
Sure,
I'm a dad who wants it all. I don't want to have to sacrifice. Derick, I want to be a great dad. I want to be a great partner. I want to be a great business owner. I want to be successful, wealthy. I want to have the life of my dreams.
Sure.
Can you talk more about that? And I'm sure you're dealing with people who, they want it all too. And so how does that play in? And what would you say to someone who's like struggling, knowing that that's what I'm getting, but I don't feel like I'm getting there?
Balance is everything. This is something my dad used to always tell me. Balance. He's like, son, you got to have balance. You got to have the yin and the yang, right? So like with me, I have these dreams of growing this company, to a worldwide international company. Well, in order to do that, sometimes I have long nights. I have early mornings. Sometimes I leave the house before my kids wake up. Sometimes I come home when they're asleep. Finding the balance of, okay, this is a sacrifice that I'm making. I didn't get to see my son before he left for school today because I had to get up and go do something. But this weekend, when I come home, nothing will take time away from him. And that's the balancing act, right? And this is where I tell parents, and I do this in my own life, is making sure that you find balance. Is with everything. I can't go, and I never take time for rest. I'm going to get burned out. And I also can't just rest all the time and never work out. Then I'm going to end up striking this vein of laziness. So asking yourself, yes, you can have it all, but through each facet of life, you must make sure that you're balanced. You've got to find that balance. And I say this for everyone. Everybody's scope of balance is different. What's balancing, and a balancing act for me may not be a balancing act for you. And this is where it's really important as a father, as a husband, as an entrepreneur, whatever you are, that you don't compare your life to someone else's life. You have to find what works for you.
Yeah, I like to say that a lot with my coaching clients, right? They get into the comparison trap, because that's really what it is. You get trapped in this valley where you're looking at what is and what isn't, as opposed to what is and how to create what you want. So it's
Exactly.
love the guidance and not compare, which is very difficult though these days.
Yeah,
So,
no, for sure.
Ed, I'm going to dominate the conversation.
So I'm let out of jail now. I got my Dad Central get out of jail card now. I'm back out. All right, no problem. Now, just good stuff there. I was even going to go deeper, but I'm going to stop right there. So I want to ask you, Derick, Can you talk about the journey of becoming a dad? What
Yeah.
fears, hopes, or challenges came up in the process? And how did you manage with them? Or how do you still manage them when they come up?
Yeah, the process of the journey of becoming a dad. My mom she was a college professor for a stint in life, and she's always been a quote unquote teacher. She's always been instilling values and teaching. My father was the same, so this is my nature, like teach. And I wanted to have children and instill all of the experiences and wisdom and knowledge that I've had in my life and pass that down to them. So that was always like when I thought of being a father, that's what I think of, like taking everything that I learned in my life and passing it along to you. Probably my biggest fear that I had, and at times it comes up, is am I being everything that my child needs me to be for them? Right. I'm constantly having dialogue with my son. I'm asking my son, hey, what do you feel as though I can do better as a father for you? And so, I talk to some parents and they're like, oh, you ask your kids that? It's like, yes, like I'm here to help guide my child in life so he or she can figure out this thing called life on their own. I cannot live life for you. I can give you, you know, perspective and give you what I think, but ultimately you have to live your life. So as parents, sometimes we're always looking from the top down at our children, but we never look at us from the bottom up. So this is why what's helped me immensely is asking my son and my daughter, hey, what do you think I can do differently? Not saying that I'll do it, but at least hearing your perspective will help me to help to be a better father to you and what you feel as though you need at this iteration in life. Um, and at times, when you have a 9-year-old and 7-year-old, sometimes they can push buttons and they don't understand that, the grand scheme of kind of what's best for them at this point in life. But something that I probably do a little differently than with my parents growing up and their generation of how they were raised is I let my children have a voice. I let them know that they have a choice in how they experience things. And it's not just you better do this and this is what it is. I want to hear. I want to hear kind of how are you processing things? And ultimately, the reason why I started doing this is helping them to increase their awareness emotionally. I just had a talk with my son this morning on the way to the gym, 7 o'clock this morning, and he um, something upset him yesterday. So I asked him this morning. I said, "What was it?" He said, "I don't really want to talk about it." I said, "Buddy, the reason why I'm asking you is so you can start to become more aware of how you feel, and you can start to become more aware of how you process emotions." I said, "I'm helping you increase your self awareness. I know you don't really fully understand this yet, but he ended up opening up, and he felt better." So then 20 minutes later, I told him, I said, "Hey, you see why you feel better? It's because you were able to release and bring awareness to that thing that was suppressed." So ultimately, at the end of the day, um, I just want to help my children and all children that I interact with. I want them to help. I want to help increase their awareness of themselves. If you can have a high degree of self awareness, you'll figure out a way to make your life work for you.
Mm. Derek, I love that point, and I think it's something that, as I've grown as a father, it's been very important for me as well to understand processing my emotions, and then, of course, being able to communicate and teach children about their own emotions and giving them um, tools to help them process their own as well. So, what I actually want to do is take this conversation in a different direction because I know that you've had, I think, what would be a very challenging circumstance in your life while you were a dad as well as a business owner. And my guess is the kids were probably watching very closely, and you had a lot that you probably had to deal with. So, can you tell us a little bit about the story of kind of what happened with a business that you were working to grow and how you modeled or helped work through that to one be the healthiest version of yourself that you could be to navigate through that very difficult circumstance, and then what you think that meant for your kids as far as modeling this idea of emotional regulation. I know it's a lot
No,
to put out
sure.
there, but why don't you just introduce a little of the story, and then maybe we can pick it up from there.
Yeah, so this was back in 2018. I had a business partner. We were doing some stuff together, and we decided to move down to Naples, Florida, to expand our business together. And when we moved down there, I'd say probably about 3 or 4 months in, we started to realize that this business partner, we were seeing a new side of him. And me and my wife at the time was like, wait, we moved down here with the hopes of prosperity and abundance and this new life. And then it's the complete opposite when we get down there. And I mean, it was really hard. It was hard on me personally. It was hard on our marriage. It was hard on us as parents. You know, we had, at the time, our kids were, you know, 6 and 4. So 6 and 3. So they didn't really fully understand. And we made the decision a year later to move back to Indiana. And I remember we lost everything. This guy stole everything from us. I mean, cars, ruined our credit, stole money. I mean, I was at the lowest of the low. And when we moved back, right before we moved back, I just had a day one day where I just broke down. And here I am sitting in this, people would kill to have a house that looked like this, but I was so empty. I was so broken. I'm sitting here laying on the floor crying. And my kids, I never forget, my son and my daughter come up and they just like kind of curl themselves up underneath me. And they're like, Daddy, what's wrong? And I realized at that moment, I said, no matter what happens, your children will always be there for you, because this is what we call unconditional love. There are no conditions. No matter what's going on, they loved it. And it was obviously heartfelt, but it also showed that like they didn't care what was going on. They didn't care. They just saw Daddy was in pain. Daddy was hurting. When we ended up moving back, I kind of sat and did some self-reflection and realized that this situation did more for me and helped me to grow as a father. You know, I was so focused on job, money and, material gain, that I lost track of what was really important. It was family. It was raising these kids and instilling these values in them. And, my son now, he's old enough now, he remembers, he's like, Daddy, why did we move down there for a year? And I opened up and told him. And I think now he's like, wow, to see us go through that and to see where we've come from, he understands like perseverance. He understands grit. He understands you got to do what you got to do, because he was actually living it. And that situation, I tell people at times, like, I had the FBI sitting in my living room for 4 hours, like, because they were after the guy who I was involved with, and they knew that I knew him. And before you know it, now here I am. I'm essentially a confidential informant for the FBI. And I'm like, how did my life even get to this? And it was hard on our marriage, because my wife, she was a stay-at-home mother. I was the one who was the breadwinner. And then when we came back home, we had lost everything. And she's like, I have to go back to work. And I was so broken in such a desolate place that I stayed at home with the kids. So for 2 years, I was a stay-at-home dad. Which was, you do what you have to do, but it really it was a blessing. I gained a better appreciation, a better relationship with my children, because I didn't realize how much I was not present. I didn't realize how much I was trying to build, that I wasn't there for my children. So when that hiatus, that 2 years happened and I was home with them, they got to hear my voice. They got to feel my soul. They got to actually see how Daddy was. And I say now, we have such a great relationship, me and my children, because of those 2 years.
Great story.
There's something, Ed, do you want to hop in? Because I've got something I can pick up on as well.
I'll let you finish, because I think I have a question that may not be related, so I'll let your flow continue.
This is something that I picked up on when you were sharing about your dad, who talked about losing his father when he was 7. And then what you just talked about there in sharing with your son about the reality of what you went through a few years ago. And I think that sometimes dads or parents want to guard or protect their children from difficult things. They don't want to open up or share these stories because either fear or they just don't think it's appropriate. And I think that there is an age appropriateness for some of these things. But it also sounds like the way that you've shared it, that they've been, one, it was a powerful experience for you when you were a child, but it also may have been a powerful experience for your son when you shared with him. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that we can limit ourselves, and we can also limit our children if we don't open up and share stories and talk about these things, about the reality, the harshness, the hard things of life sometimes, in in our best intent, but it may actually
Sure.
not be. And talk about that if you would.
Yeah. So like I remember when that whole thing happened and I'm in the lowest, I felt resentment towards my parents.
Mm.
And the reason why I felt resentment towards them was because it's like they never let me in their life to see like the hardships that they went through. So I thought this was just me. So, of course, the ego, it has to be somebody's fault. So I realized at that moment, I'm like, I need to start being a little more vulnerable, maybe a little more authentic with my son, my daughter. I need to let them know that, sometimes daddy struggles with things. Back when daddy was 25, daddy went through this and daddy struggled with that. Letting them see that I'm human. And I think sometimes as fathers, especially, we have this like we're supposed to be these masculine warriors and we're indestructible. And what that ends up doing is creating this facade in our children's head, and the unrealistic expectation and this pressure that they have to be that. To me, the real warrior is the one who is aware of their emotions and they're aware of their shortcomings and are able to process them and share them with the world without feeling as though they're less than. So if I can teach my children and teach my son to say, hey, look, I struggle with some things. When I tell him that, he perks up. He's like, wait, what? It's like, wait, you struggle with things too? You go through? Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes things don't go daddy's way. I don't tell you about everything, but I want to let you know that you're upset right now because mommy and daddy won't let you have ice cream. But sometimes that happens in my life too. When I want to maybe work with this person, have this opportunity, that doesn't happen. And sometimes I get upset, but I know I have to be better and not lash out. And so as dads, and I preach this to my clients that I work with, teach your children how to cope with adversity through you being relatable and showing things that you had to work through. You're almost you think it's going to like diminish your importance or value. It's actually going to empower your children and view you as like, wow, like if dad did that and he made it through it, I know I can do anything. So now the conversations with my mom, my mother, my father, it's like I ask those questions. Hey, what's the toughest thing you've struggled with that I never knew about? And to hear, it's like, wow, like Superman and Superwoman, they are human. They are human. So yeah.
Mm. So good. I could go on, but I'm gonna transition over to Ed so he can pick up from there.
Well, there's a number of conversation pieces, and it's interesting how you just shared that story of being open with your kids. I'm being mentored at the present time by a gentleman who's 81 years old, and he has a company that they mentor CEOs. And what you're saying relates to what he was saying, because a dad is a CEO.
Wow. Yeah.
And
I never
I
thought
and
about it
I
like that.
and I asked this gentleman yesterday, like, what are the key things when it comes to mentoring CEOs these days? Because his company mentors CEOs and he's mentored CEOs. And some of the things you were just mentioning, they're being open, being relatable, being authentic with your kids, all came up in what you were just sharing. So thank you for that great value add. One of the things I've picked up while I've been listening is intentionality.
Mm,
So I wanted
that's
you to talk about the importance of intentionality when it comes to being a father.
it's everything. Um, Being intentional, being deliberate. Um, it's everything. Kids know. Kids know. I just kids are some of the most intuitive creatures there are. They know when something's genuine. They know when you're really like you're doing this because you genuinely want to do it. Like, and that takes discipline. And this is where I like sports has helped me. Obviously, if you play sports at a certain level, you're going to have a level of discipline. Well, that translates in being a parent, right? I have to make sure that maybe I am tired. I'm tired, but you know what? This is going to mean more to my son than probably it would mean to me. So I have to make sure that I'm intentional in the attention that I give in this moment when I am tired. I have to make sure that I'm just as excited when my daughter has her cheerleading competition as I am when, my son has his career high. right? Even though I know nothing about cheerleading compared to basketball, I have to make sure that I show that energy. Intentionality is everything. And, the beauty of it is translate in everything that you do. I'm trying to be intentional with my wife. I try to be intentional with relationships with my clients. I try to be intentional with everything that I do, not just being a father, but being a father can be the grounds for cultivating that intentionality for sure, and vice versa.
Nice. Drew, you want to continue? I got some more, but go ahead.
Oh, you keep going then.
Okay. Relate your sports experience to your fatherhood experience.
Yeah. So I can remember when I was in high school. And I wasn't highly recruited, right? Went to a small school. I was a big fish in a small pond, right? This was before the age of technology, of YouTube, and being able, they could see anywhere. But I would get up every morning at 6 a.m. and go and work out by myself in the gym every single morning. Every morning, I thought I would throw the ball off the wall and catch it, and do full court drills or shoot it, get my own rebound. I was every single day, and I'll never forget. I had a teammate ask me, he goes, "Why do you do this? Why are you doing this?" And I'm like, "Because I'm going to play college basketball one day. That's why." And then when I got to college, I did the same thing. And I had a teammate come in. Instead of getting up early in the morning, I'd go in there late. I'm talking 1, 2 in the morning. I'd be in there shooting, working out by myself. I had a teammate say, like, "Why are you doing this? You're not going to play professionally." Same thing, small, big fish in a small pond. And I'm like, "Yes, I am. I'm going to play professionally one day. I'm going to make a living playing basketball one day. That's why I'm doing this." There was many times that it never looked like either was going to happen. But my father instilled in me, you still get up every day and do what you know you need to do. And I would get up every day and do what I needed to do. And I'm realizing that this is the same way with being a father. I have to get up and provide. I have to get up and be emotionally present and be physically. I have to do all of these things that maybe some days I just don't feel like I'm at my best. But I hear my dad's voice saying, "Son, you got to get up and you got to do what you know you need to do." And that discipline of me throwing that ball off the wall 6 a.m, going in at 1 and 2 o'clock at night and getting shots up, that energy, that muscle that I was cultivating is the same muscle that I use as being a father. So that, like, my son's 9 years old. So I told him, I said, "Here's what we're going to do. Twice a week, we're going to get up at 6:20 and we'll be on the floor by 7 o'clock. So yesterday we did it. Today we did it." And he's like, "Man, I was so tired." Yesterday, he's like, "I was so tired when I got up." He doesn't realize that it has nothing to do with basketball. If he never plays professional basketball or college or high school, I'm okay with that. But what I'm doing is I'm instilling him and teaching him how to cultivate the muscle of discipline, because that's the same energy that you'll need as when you're a father. That's the same muscle that you'll need when you are a husband one day. So sports is, it's obviously we know this, but it's just a fantastic teacher of life, right? Sports is the microcosm of life that all my lessons that I teach and pass along, I learned a lot of them through playing the game of basketball, soccer, baseball, football.
Nice. What's been your greatest challenge as a dad?
It's self-inflicted. The challenge of, am I being enough? Am I doing enough? Am I what you need? That's the gift and the curse of being a parent, or and having a growth mindset. I constantly want to be better. I want to be better today than I was yesterday in everything that I do. Sometimes that's the gift. The curse is you question, are you? Am I enough? Am I doing enough? Am I being present like they need me to be? So that, would I say, is the greatest challenge. I don't, some parents struggle with letting your children learn lessons, letting them scrape their knees. And because I do have a growth mindset, I don't have a problem with that. I think sometimes, maybe at times, if you ask my wife, it's finding the balance of letting them learn their lessons, letting them skin their knees, but then also knowing at the right time when to come in and scoop them up and say, "Hey, I got you." Sometimes "Hey, he's got to figure it out." And my wife's saying, "No, what are you talking about? No." So that's probably been the challenge of finding that balance of making sure that I'm pushing my children, but I'm not pushing my children. That's probably my greatest challenge as a father.
Can I pick up on something you've touched on before and also in that last comment?
Sure.
Working with your wife, that's something that you said the marriage became strained in the height of that difficulty. Can you talk to us about the importance of teamwork with your partner or the other parent and how crucial that is to your ability to show up and as a dad?
It's a I look at marriage as a partnership, and it gets strengthened even more when you do have children. Each of you, I mean, literally, like you've given 23 chromosomes, you've given 23. We're coming in on a partnership on this child. Well, with a partnership, you have, like, my wife, she had a completely different upbringing, completely different set of values, right? Compared to me. Not that hers are right and mine are wrong, or hers are wrong or mine are right, but being able to come together and say, okay, you have your experiences and your perspective, I have mine. Let's figure out a way to mesh and blend the best parts of us, so that way we can then pour those into our children's cups. And then hopefully our children, as they get older, they'll take all the good things that they feel worked for them from our teachings, and then kind of throw the stuff that they didn't like to the side, and then they'll do the same thing with their partner. But what I've learned with being married is communication is everything. Everything. Like, me and my wife, for our first 6 months of dating each other, I was on the road. So, we were having to use AOL Instant Messenger and email and text each other, to really, at the time, I was like, man, this is hard. But now looking at it, this was the foundation of our relationship. It was communicating with each other, because that's the only way we could make it work. So now, if maybe she may say something or do something that, either of us don't agree with it, instead of us talking about it in front of the kids, we can wait a couple hours and wait till the kids go to sleep and have a civil conversation and say, hey, from my perspective, here's how I process this. Maybe we can try doing it a little differently. I always, my marriage right now is the best. It's not that it was ever bad, but the level of communication that we're at is, it's phenomenal. So, and it's everything. It is everything. It's a partnership. So equal parts have to be equally yoked.
Great.
Nice.
Maybe we'll start to wind down. I just want to know, what's the most important skill you've developed that is essential to your ability to be a dad? And then why is it so important?
I think relatability. This is leadership, right? Relatability, vulnerability. All that does is, so I always tell people, like, people say, I want to be a leader. Okay, you want to be a leader, you got to be relatable. In order to be relatable, you have to be authentic. In order to be authentic, you're going to have to be vulnerable. And when you are vulnerable, then you can be trusted. And when you are trusted, then they will follow you. So these are the same principles, the same core principles that I develop in leadership, but I also develop my children. I got to make sure they're relatable. So I share stories of my shortcomings. I got to make sure that I'm authentic. I got to make sure that what I say, I actually do. I can't say one thing and do something completely different. I have to make sure that I'm vulnerable. So if I'm struggling with something, and my son, he may say, Daddy, you're quiet. I'll tell him, yeah, I'm struggling with this right now. I'm just trying to work through some stuff right now. So now when I come to him and say, hey, buddy, try this. You don't have to do it, but I think it'd probably be best for you if you try this. There's a level of trust there, because he can relate. He's seen me authentic, and he's seen me vulnerable. Whether he's aware of it or not, maybe it's on a subconscious level. This is something that I found has been, probably as a father, and comparing it to my father, this is the biggest difference. My father grew up, you don't let anybody know what's going on, internally. This is just, it's how he was raised. So my skill set as a father is letting my children know, like, hey, I'm human. Sometimes I won't get it right. Sometimes I may do things or say things to you that when I look back on it, I'm like, what was I thinking? But I'll be the first one to say, hey, I got to do better. I got to do better. And by doing that, my children know that they have a voice. They have a voice. My son can say to me, hey, Dad, I don't agree with that. Okay, let me hear what you're saying then. Let me hear what you're saying. Let me see from your perspective. And what we're doing by doing that, what I found is it's teaching our children to realize that they have a choice and they can own their own feelings. They can own their own perceptions, which is everything when you get to be an adult. We don't realize it. You know, probably because you have coaching clients, how many people's perceptions of ourselves we hold on to, because we were never given permission to hold on to our own perceptions of us. So that's, I think, probably, if I had to say, that's probably the most important skill that I've developed, is being a father.
That's great. So good. Thanks for that, Derick.
No, thank you.
Well, one last quick thing. You have mentioned your dad a lot during this conversation. What's the message you have for your dad? And I'm banking that he's going to watch this.
It's funny you asked this, because I just had a conversation with him about 3 weeks ago, and I called him up. I said, "Hey, Dad, I just want to tell you thank you." He was like, "What?" I said, "Because, I'm 39 years old, and I find myself saying and doing things, and I'm like, oh, we call it pop-pop. That's pop-pop. Pop-pop saying that. It's pop-pop doing that." And I told him thank you. And I said, "Thank you for everything that you did. And thank you for everything that maybe you didn't do, because both of those things were teaching me." And I said, "I just want to give you your flowers now. I want to tell you thank you for all that you've done. I know that you did the best that you could at the level of awareness that you had at each point in life. And I just want to tell you that I appreciate that, because as a father, I can see sometimes it's not easy." And I would tell him that now. And probably something else I didn't tell him is, I was watching him. I was always watching him. I was watching everything he did, everything he said, from the way he walked to the way he tied his shoes. I watched everything he did. And he always carried himself with the utmost integrity, the utmost dignity, to the point that today I don't even realize I try to live my life the same exact way as the way my father did. The same exact way. And not talking about like maybe the way I talk, I'm talking about the internal state of when he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. When he's talking, he's looking you in your eye. These are all the things that my father doesn't realize. I was sitting here watching him as a little boy. So I just want to tell him thanks for just being the beautiful person that he was, because I realize now that he actually had every reason not to. So, yeah.
That's great and very powerful. Love that, Ed, that you brought that forward, and thank you so much for sharing it so authentically, Derick. But Derick, why don't you tell our audience, whoever's listening, how they can get a hold of you, or what it is that you offer for them, so that if they've loved this and loved hearing from you, that they could reach out to you.
Yeah, you can find me on all my social media handles are at DGMindset, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok. You can find me on my website, DGMindset.com. Send me an email. Also, too, I have a podcast called The Pathway to Your Results, and it's a self-improvement podcast that range on a various topics. I actually just released an episode this past Friday. It comes out every Friday, but this past Friday was about how to raise conscious kids, how to raise kids with a higher self-awareness. So I always encourage everybody to reach out to me, contact me. I always answer all the emails. It's always me. I feel like I'm here to help people. So anytime someone reaches out, I'm always welcome again.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Derick.
Thank you,
guys.
Derick. Much appreciated. Continued success, and we're here to serve if you need any help.
Well, thank you. And thank you both for having me on. And more importantly, thank you both for what you're doing, being an unbelievable resource for fathers. Truly, from the bottom of my heart, what you guys are doing. So maybe sometimes it doesn't get measured or maybe get glorified, but you guys are making this world a better place. So thank you both.
Honor's ours. Thank you.
Take care. All right, man. Another epic conversation. You are the star on that one, my man.
Derick was the star.
Well, you both were. You were good. It was a wonderful conversation, epic. So many, as I say, knowledge bombs dropped during that conversation.
Yeah, there are so many things that I could probably point to, but I think what I'll just simply say is, I started out with gratitude, And I think Derick finished off with gratitude. I think the ability to have that sense of gratitude for the privilege, the opportunity to be a dad, it's not always glorified. It's sometimes very challenging and very difficult. But at the end of the day, when we can cultivate the right mindset and starting with being grateful for the opportunities that we do have and what is in our life, I think we will be able to weather through the storms and come out the other side in a better place. And I think Derick gave great wisdom to help dads who may be struggling, who may be going through difficult times right now, who are listening, to say, hey, I can grab onto that. I can hear this aspect of this story, and okay, I can do that one thing. And if that's you as a dad listening right now, I'd encourage you, just do that one thing and commit to it and go forward, so that you can get to a better place and see the type of results that you want to see in your life.
Well, I'll just add on what Drew said. Even strong dads struggle. So I just want to put it out there. Another great conversation. Hey, we would like to hear from you, because we're hearing from you through reviews and all that. And we have a number of different ways for you to touch base with us. Email podcast@dadcentral.ca. Website, dadcentral.ca. The show, dadcentral.ca/podcast. And as always, the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. I'd like to thank you for watching and listening to another epic conversation. More to come, and excited for more and more conversations. So, Drew, any final words?
Nope, just enjoy the show and keep telling us what you want to hear, and we'll keep trying to bring it to you.
All right. Take care. Be well, everyone. Keep the faith. Until the next show.